You know, there are some names in America that have become synonymous with various things, and the name Menninger certainly is synonymous with the treatment of mental illness and quite often the cure. With me is Dr. Robert Menninger, who is the medical director of the Community Services Clinic of the Menninger Foundation in Topeka, Kansas, and of course having that great famous last name. Has that been a burden or a pleasure for you so far?
Well, from the professional point of view, it's a great pleasure and quite an advantage. I was a little bit impressed to check into your hotel here, and the young man who helped me in the car recognized the name and what it was associated with, and you can't help but be touched and impressed by that. And I can't take any personal claim for having achieved that fate, but I'm glad to be associated with it.
I had to ask you at the outset if you really wanted to become a psychiatrist all your life. You know, we talked just before we started, a lot of men seem to be shoved into careers they never wanted, with famous names like yours.
Well, Topeka's it's such a small town, it was when I grew up, and the only psychiatry was the big business, and still is between that and the Santa Fe Railroad. That's Topeka, and the state government. I guess I shouldn't leave them out. But I always thought about if I went into medicine, it would be psychiatry. We still have more psychiatrists than all of the physicians in town combined, and for a city of 150,000, that's a lot of psychiatrists in town. And it's a big business in Topeka, and I mean that in the sense that a lot of people are involved. We have the state hospital, the state system has some hospitals there, the federal system of the VA has some clinics there, the community or the county, and then the private facility represented by the foundation.
Let me ask you a couple of lighter questions, but still things that I hear running through the lay society. One, you go to a psychiatrist, you ask him a question, and he asks you a question. In other words, you say, I feel da-da-da, and he says, well, how do you feel about that? And the patient says, I don't know, you tell me. And he goes, well, I don't know, you tell me. This seems to be a recurring complaint of people who see psychiatrists. Now, perhaps they're expecting something they have no right to expect, but I have heard people say that psychiatrists generally don't give answers. They just re-ask the questions you've already asked. Is that part of the treatment in most cases?
Well, not really, but it's typical of doctors, you know. You go to an internist and you say, I hurt, and his first question is going to be where, and tell me about it, and how does it hurt, and he'll do the same thing because he needs to know the symptoms of what you're complaining about. A psychiatrist works with feelings, we can't tell a person how he feels any more than an internist can tell a patient where his pain is. They've got to tell us. Now, a lot of people wish they could go to a physician and here I am, do whatever, fix me up. Well, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't for us any more than it does for the internist or the surgeon. And what we like to know is maybe not put just exactly in the words you use, but can you tell us a little bit about this feeling you have of being depressed? What does it feel? You mean you skip rope 3 times down the hall, or you cry a lot, or I don't necessarily suggest you do it that way either, but I mean, there are ways of trying to get the person to talk about what feelings he's having about the situation that he comes to. So they oftentimes will ask questions, at least to start with, to find out what's going on.
What do you think about all this, well, you know, biofeedback and holistic medicine? In other words, the brain controlling the body. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm very impressed with it because very personal nature. A couple of years ago, my father had a brain tumor removed at the ripe old age of 83. And
this is Dr. Carl Menninger, the founder.
And he's they had to damage the nerve on the side of the face that controls the smiling, and he's gone to biofeedback, and it's amazing how he's learning to get back to the movement of the side of his face. We do a lot of it at the foundation for hypertension and migraine headaches, stroke victims we're working on now, and I'm pretty impressed with it. At least I'm impressed with it. We're on to something that we may not understand completely, but there's something's going on there that I think is going to be properly researched and investigated, and we'll know more about it. I'm aware that some people think it's a bunch of quackery, and it's another one of the many things that come in and out of psychiatry that seemed like the answer to something and then passes away. Hypnotism is a good example of some of that.
Right.
But I don't know. There's too many very excellent people working in research on biofeedback, and with some pretty substantial evidence that they're on to something that we don't really understand completely, but I think there's a lot to it.
One last couple of questions to ask you. Stress, is that an overdone word in our society?
No.
You hear it all the time. Stress, 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 heart attacks, high blood pressure, strokes.
I think we're just beginning to recognize what some people have been talking about for a long time. There's Dr. Hans Selye, S-E-L-Y-E, who wrote books on stress, and he's still a very prominent guy. We heard about in medical school a few years back, but it wasn't paid much attention to until just fairly recently, when we're beginning to realize that there's tremendous stresses on people. The stress of just living with the society is something that takes its toll on the person that's doing it. The pressures to get ahead in whatever one's business is, the pressures to get enough money to put their kids through school, and all of these do cause all kinds of pressures, and there is certainly going to be a stress reaction. And I think we're just beginning to realize that what these kinds of reactions could be and what might cause them.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the Mental Health Association of Dade County and Ann Dre for sharing your time with us. We appreciate it.
Well, I'm very honored to be here and glad to do so.
Thank you, Dr. Robert Fenninger. We'll be right back.